Thank you for coming to this conference today. And today's program begins with a keynote speech by Professor Jo Eun-soo, teaching Buddhist philosophy at the Seoul National University in Korea. Professor Jo, along with Gongak Snim, a co-representative of 샤카디타 Korea, she has been devoted to 샤카디타 activities for more than 20 years. The title of her speech is, What Does Modernity Mean for 19th Century Buddhist Women in Korea? Please welcome Professor Jo with a big round of applause.
Hello. 안녕하세요. 이렇게 와주셔서 감사합니다. 저 오늘 1세션에서 발표하실 논문들은 자료집에 있습니다. 자료집을 참고해 주시면 되겠습니다. Please refer to your proceedings. So it is a great honor to speak at the 샤카디타 International Conference today. Since my first conference in Taiwan in 2002, 샤카디타 has become a very important part of my life. It might even be said that it was through my continuous participation in previous 샤카디타 conferences that my existence was validated as both a woman and a Buddhist. When we study modern Buddhist history, we often use modernity as a frame of reference. The question I'm raising today is, when studying modern women's history, how well balanced is the picture of the period that the term modernity provides, especially in the case of Buddhist women in Korea in the 19th century? So it is important for us to look at who the bhikshunis or the Buddhist women of the modern period specifically were. So for more than 20 years, I have felt the importance of oral history research and have emphasized it on several occasions. But I don't think I really knew them until I recently came across the source of oral histories on modern Buddhist women. The source I'm referring to is a collection of recordings made by Samosunim, a bhikkhu, a monk, who preached in America for a long time. He traveled all around the country, Korea, during his 2 visits in 2005 and 2006, interviewing more than 200 monastics and women. The period they remember ranges from about the 1890s to the early 2000s. As I listened to their stories, I realized vividly that their lives were indeed ones of hardship and struggle. I've always been interested in Buddhist history, but I've never been trained in historical research methodology. I've spent most of my life studying Buddhist philosophy and doing so in a traditional way, like mining the gold mine of Buddhist ideas through texts left behind by the masters. So recently, however, my interest in women has led me to reflect on my research. I realized that I ultimately wanted my studies to be relevant to my life. Since the subject of my studies in Buddhism, I've had many opportunities for good teaching and practices, but I cannot say I truly understood it until I realized that at the root of my existence, I was a woman, and the world of other women's experiences resonated with that of mine. I also realized that the word of their experiences could only very rarely be found in any of the books filling the shelves of my office. So I will skip the 2 paragraphs. So studies on modern women, modern Buddhism by Buddhist scholars almost without exception claim that the modern period is characterized by modernity. And the modernity takes as its main criteria instances of social manifestation, such as institutional establishment and the social influences. So naturally, the main focus of existing research on modern Buddhism has been on men or bhikkhus who established new institutions, founded organizations, led large assemblies or gatherings, or created new ideas and practices. In other words, you have to have a record of public activity in order to be considered a modern person. If that's the case, then there is no way for modern Buddhist women to make it into those ranks. So my point here is that measuring modernity through the lens of institution and the reforms does not tell the whole story of women's history and their lives. The value of life in the modern oral histories I observed was not in those reforms or in the creations of new institutions. I will skip the rest of the paragraph. They went through a lot of changes in the turbulence of the modern era. Their living conditions during the colonial period were very modest, but these are the people who went on the road in the 1930s and the 40s in search of Zen masters such as Kyung-ho and Manggong. Their actual lives consisted of doing laundry and weaving for the monks of the big temples, and they scraped by with the rice they received each year and begging for alms in nearby villages. So from 1950 to 1953, during the war and the devastation that followed, these women and nuns were busy protecting their own lives and the lives of the masses. During the war, some evacuated to Daegu, for example, where they acquired a house and started a temple. And after the war, they worked fiercely to restore the temples they had been destroyed in the war, and it was their Buddhist women who helped rebuild them and maintain the religious space. So when the banner of purification flew in the 1960s, they were at the forefront of the movement for the cause of bhikshus, and entered the temples ahead of the bhikshus to purify them of married monks before leaving again to make way for the bhikshus. So while these women lived on the margins of history, there is still a direction to their lives. And I think that thanks to the modern era, as well as the presence of these women during that period, Korean Buddhism was able to grow exponentially in the 1970s. Fortunately, the overall improvement in the status of women and in the social material basis of that time also helped them expand their activities. So I will skip the 2 big paragraphs. So regarding the significance of modernity for these modern bhikshunis and women, I have come to the following tentative conclusions over the past year of listening to these oral histories. First of all, these women attempt to reflect on their lives and engage in subjective and autonomous thought and reflection on their own existence. They seek to expand their individual subjective consciousness through various activities throughout their lives. They seek to escape and improve the conditions they define their current lives by systematizing the structure of their individual temples or lineages within modern spaces and the social environment. While it is difficult to find voices asserting for women's equality, we can nevertheless clearly observe a will to improve the irrationalities of their current lives. They do not openly expose the irregularities or contradictions in the Buddhist world of their time, but still express their thoughts on the contradictions of their current lives. They reveal that the highest goal of a Buddhist is cultivation, and they set a direction and make a diligent effort to move forward on the path even under difficult conditions. Their collective effort and organization should be specially noted. In addition, collective activities such as securing a space for practice, they can accommodate more people, and rehabilitating temples appear to be an effort to restore the tradition of communal life. In the aftermath of the Korean War, female practitioners began to enter war-torn temples in an earnest and organized manner to secure their own living and practice spaces, and to work there to restore the temples. This would have required not only physical labor, organizational skills, and administrative strengths, but above all, religious charisma and an inspirational power to gather devotees, to generate and receive offerings. So these leaders' experience in leading and directing large-scale rebuilding efforts would later become the driving force behind the Bhikshuni's collective energy and power accomplished remarkable strides after 1970s. And when these nuns said they were going to rebuild the temples and create a religious space, it was the lay women who supported them both financially and in their daily lives as devotees and as patrons. So I will conclude. These women do not discuss the significance of their efforts and the suffering in the context of their time, nor do they express a desire to be rewarded or recognized for them. When I asked why they undertook such hardships, their answers are consistent. First, they wanted to create better conditions for practice, and the second, they wanted to live a more meaningful life. In so doing, these women were developing their potential as religious leaders. So their lives clearly had a direction. It was because of the modern era and the presence of these women during the time that the remarkable growth of Korean Buddhism in the 1970s was possible. Riding the wave of change that rapidly improved the status and the social material basis of women in society at large, the sphere of their activities expanded dramatically. And that wave is now manifest in the form of Korean Buddhist women working in harmony with the world of this spacious space at COEX in June 2023. It is my hope that the seed sown by these modern women will now be harvested and newly bloom through the eyes and the heart of a new generation of researchers. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your insightful presentation. Now I would like to invite our moderator and presenters of the first session to the stage. Please welcome with a big hand. I would like to introduce our moderator of the first session, Professor Linda Sun Crowder of California State University in the United States. Please welcome Professor Crowder with a big hand. Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome everyone. Good morning to the first panel session of papers at the 18th 샤카디타 conference here in Seoul, Korea. Our first panelist this morning is Suk-Yung Sunim, who will be presenting her paper on a new look at the history of Korean Bhikshunis through a digital network.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. How are you? I am deeply honored and grateful to have the opportunity to speak in front of such great people today. I am Suk-Yung, lead director of the Research Institute for the Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha. The topic of my presentation is a new look at the history of Korean Bhikkhunis through a digital network affiliated with the Korean Bhikkhuni Association. The Research Institute for the Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha was established in February 2020, a year after the inauguration of Bongak Sunim as the 12th president of the association. The institute aims to raise awareness of the lives and activities of Korean Bhikkhunis by collecting and compiling data on Bhikkhunis. Our achievements include the compilations of the history of Korean Bhikkhunis, the oral records of Korean Bhikkhunis, the Korean Bhikkhuni document data archive, and the Korean Bhikkhuni dictionary data archive. These projects were only possible thanks to Bongak Sunim, the current president of the Korean Bhikkhuni Association, single-handedly established the Korean Bhikkhuni Research Institute in 1999 during her time as a professor at Jungang Sangha University. Together with other scholar monastics, she gathered and published literature on Korean Bhikkhunis. Later, all the books that were published in this period were donated to the Research Institute for the Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha. These are the materials that Bongak Sunim passed on to the Institute. I wanted to add to these materials by collecting newspaper articles on Korean Bhikkhunis from 2013 onwards and compiling them into a new volume. However, after discussing this with the members of the institute. I concluded that we should prioritize digitizing the extant 11 volumes instead, as people nowadays rely on computers more than books. Our first task was to scan the pages of Bhikkhuni, later books, extract key information, and digitize it. This took about 2 years total to complete. However, looking at the results of our digitization work raised the question of whether knowledge of Korean Bhikkhuni can be meaningfully transmitted in the digital world only with this kind of digitization. This is because the process of acquiring knowledge was not different from the analog environment in the past, in that you have to read other people's writings except for using digital media instead of paper books. I got to know Professor Hyun Kim, a prominent expert in this field, from the Academy of Korean Studies. Professor Kim, a digital humanities scholar, suggested a new goal and practice of digital transformation of Bhikkhuni data. While digitalization means using computers to make the process of existing tasks more effective, digital transformation means changing the process itself to a new level. With the help of Professor Kim, we once again mustered up the courage to work towards our new goal of making our Bhikkhuni data available on a whole new level. We extracted various keywords in our Bhikkhuni records and generated the relation data on how each keyword correlated to one another. Data compiled by analyzing text in this way is called semantic data. Semantic data not only illustrates the connections between keywords within a text fragment, but also illuminates text connections with other texts that use the same keywords. As a result, we can construct a vast network of knowledge and information. For example, let's take a look at the network created from the semantic data of the Buddhist practice stories of Korean Bhikkhunis, which contains the stories of 329 Bhikkhunis. We can see that the chain of data goes on and on. I will now take a moment to directly explore the achievements we have accomplished on the internet. Let's take the example of one of prominent Bhikkhuni, Son Master Venerable Inong Snim. This is the main page of the website. If you scroll down, you will see a search box. Let me enter the search term Inong 스님 here. This is Inong 스님. Now let's take a look at Korean Bhikkhuni Dictionary Data Archive, created by the Research Institute for the Korean Bhikkhuni Sangha. Here, you will find various materials about Inong Snim, ranging from joining the Sangha to passing away. These photos were taken with venerable teachers who guided her during that time. These letters was from Son Master Ilta Snim. This is the baru that Venerable Inong Snim used when she was alive. The following is a collection of newspaper articles about Venerable Inong Snim. As you can see, you can find information about the Snim that has been covered in articles by Korean newspapers until now. If we successfully achieve our task of semantic comparison of Bhikkhuni data, the result will not just be used to identify individual information on Bhikkhunis, but will become an archive of knowledge that can be used to understand the semantic context of the subjects at hand. In the contemporary digital society, constructing a digital database is an effective way of recording, preserving, and educating the public on the lives of monastics and Korean Bhikkhunis in particular. Additionally, it is my hope that this network is used not just by Korean Bhikkhunis, but shared with Buddhist monastics and lay women all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukying Sunan. Our next presenter is Jinwon Sunim, who will be speaking on a proposal for the future of Korean Buddhism, the status of Bhikkhunis within the Jogye order of Korean Buddhism.
Good morning. 네, 편안하게 쉬셨습니까? 진원입니다. 사실 많이 떨립니다. 제가 하는 페이지는 57페이지입니다. 네, 57페이지 참조해 주시면 되겠습니다. At the time of the emergence of Buddhism, around 2,500 years ago, Indian social norms made it difficult for women to leave home and become Buddhist renunciants. The caste system and the patriarchal social structure placed the women in an extremely disadvantageous position in a society of this nature. Bhikkhunis would have been regarded as individuals who deserved protection from heretical sects and delinquents. Thousands of years later, however, the modern world no longer requires such a patriarchal system for female practitioners. Modern renaissance women are already as independent and exemplary as their male counterparts enjoy an important part of the Sangha, as shown by their practice and dissemination of the teaching. I'll skip. So here, I'll focus on the problem of gender inequality between bhikkhus and bhikkhus as evident in the constitution of the Jogye order of Korean Buddhism, and suggest way for possible improvement. Structural inequality in the constitution and the legislation of the Jogye order. The constitution of the Jogye order was enacted to honor and uphold the Shakyamuni Buddha's fundamental teaching of the perfect, complete alignment of oneself and all others. Since its establishment in March 22, 1916, it has been amended 26 times, with the last amendment being in 2050. With regard to the elective system, the constitution of the Jogye order states, the purpose of the election law is to contribute to the unity and the development of the order by ensuring that the various elections of the order are conducted freely and fairly by preventing irregularities in the process. It also says that this applies to the election of the President, the Central Assembly members, and the Diocese Assembly members. Based on the Constitution, the leader of the order is elected on not the basis of the Vinaya, but on grounds of a majority vote according to social law. However, a closer look at the details reveals that the right of gender inequality may not be properly guaranteed. In other words, there are patriarchal perfect included in the Constitution that may contribute to the structural inequality among the Bhikkhu and Bhikkhuni Sangha. I'll skip. Since 1962, the Constitution have been revised 26 times, but the changes in society and the status and role of bhikkhunis have not been adequately reflected when it comes to the order's system of election. The Constitution clearly states that the order is composed of snim and lay followers. However, bhikkhunis are excluded from important positions in the order, even though they are one of two groups regarded as the wheels of the chariot. Thus, the Constitution of the Jogye order of Korean Buddhism continues to contain element of inequality. This issue has been addressed many times by the media, both inside and outside bodies. But no satisfactory solution has been found so far. The issue of suffrage within the order. The terms suffrage in the context of the order refers to the right to participate in the management of the organizations, including the right to elect representatives of the organizations both directly and indirectly, and the right to express one's opinion regarding the amendment to the Constitution and the other related law, as well as the drafting and registration of policies. Here, we will examine one of the main rights of suffrage, how the Electoral College to elect the President of the order is formed. Authority of the President. We will first examine what kind of authority the President has over the order. The President represents the 조계 order of Korean bodies and oversees the order's efforts according to Article 15 of the order's Constitution. The power of the President include 1. The power to submit amendment to the other's Constitution and legislation, and 2. The power to authorize to exercise of the law by delegation. In the effect, the President has great power and influence over implement decisions of the order. However, only the incumbent members of the Central Assembly members and the Diocesan Assembly members are eligible to be part of the Electoral College. That the vote for the President, who is the chief administrator of the order, in other words, just because one is an ordained member of the 조계 order of Korean Buddhism does not mean that one has full voting right, and does the change of bhikkunis being included in the highly selective electoral college, because even now, authority of the Central Assembly, according to the Constitution of the 조계 order of Korean Buddhism, members of Central Assembly elected by the Diocesan Assembly are eligible to be part of the Electoral College. This is because they have the right to vote for matters including 1. Amendment to the Constitution and the legislation bills, and 2. Electing the Education Director, Propagation Director, Tribunal Director, First Instance Tribunal Director, etc. However, bhikkhuni candidates for the Central Assembly are nominated by the Steering Committee of the National Bhikkhuni Association. The bhikkhuni members of the Central Assembly are elected by the Committee for the Election for functional representatives and notified by the Central Election Commission. There are 80 bhikkhus, and all 11 bigunis in the Central Assembly. Each put the bigunis on absolute disadvantages when it comes to voting and participating in the higher level of the orders. Of course, the fact that 10 seats were assigned at all to bigunis in a small form of progress. This would have been impossible without the long-term approach of bigunis and the support bigus, who acknowledged their leadership and competence. However, this is still far from the level of equality expressed today, and there is still need for a fundamental change. Authority of the Ocean Assembly members. The members of the Ocean Assembly, including the electoral college, consist of the head and the vice head of the ordained monastic of the head temples, directing affairs of the head temples and the head of the sub-temples, and 10 councillors elected in direct election. The deliberative voting rights of the Diocesan Assembly include election of the president of the electoral college, enactment and the revision of the orders law. To be recommended to the Central Assembly, and 3. Medal to be recommended to the Central Assembly, etc. Only a very limited number of bigunis who are in change, who head temples or sub-temples, are eligible for the electoral college through the Diocesan Assembly. Therefore, it is regarded to the right of suffrage in relation to the president of the order. It can be said that biguni are not even given candidacy for presidency, and they only have a very slim change to be included in the electoral college that votes for the president withdrawal. Through the 10 seats all allotted to bigunis in the Central Assembly, or as heads of the head or sub-temples among the Diocesan Assembly. Inequality in the order's constitution and the right to participate. Thus, the class of the order's constitution that concern the elective process reveal the underlying problem of gender inequality. It is imperative that this issue of gender inequality the improved as soon as possible for the harmony and the development of the order. Korean Buddhism will be able to make a great leap forward once the world fosters gender equality by raising the status of bigunis and all allowing them to properly exhibit their competence in various fields such as propagation and education. Therefore, I will propose the following action based on the principle of gender equality in reform the order's constitutional regulation regarding monastic suffrage and the right to participate in the order. First, the clause stating that only a bhikkhu who has a jongsa post and above, order 13 years above Dharmaiji and am less 15 years old, is qualified of because become of president. Candidates should be promptly revised based on the principle of the gender equality. Second, to address this structural problem, we need to ensure that the same proportion of bhikkhus and bhikkhunis are represented in the office of the president. The Central Assembly and the Diocesan Assembly, which have a power to amend to other legislation, will skip. 한 장 넘기겠습니다. 마지막 페이지입니다. Expanding to roles of bhikkhunis of the modern world. We have this for observed that under the current constitution of the order, bhikkhunis have won access to high positions of authority such as the president member of the Central Assembly, head of Diocesan headquarters, and member of the Diocesan Assembly, to create a legal basis of bhikkhunis to be elected to those positions of authority and be given a chance to properly demonstrate their capabilities. The Buddhist world as a whole must open their eyes to this reality and make a concentrated effort to important those conditions. It's crucial that bhikkhunis in particular take active instead in this issue. I will skip. 마지막 페이지 하단입니다. Solving the gender inequality issue within the Sangha will help bhikkhunis demonstrate their abilities better and will also appeal to the younger MZ generation. It will goes a way to properly convey the Buddha Dharma to monastics and lay people alike to if gender equality is achieved within the Sangha. Buddhism will be able to grow strong and brighter than either. Thank you.
Thank you, Jinwon Sunim. Our next presenter is Jahun Sunim, who will be speaking on compassion practice of Korean female Buddhist medical workers during the COVID-19 pandemic.
안녕하십니까. Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to stand here in front of respected senior venerables and senims and colleague senims, and also lay Buddhist friends. I am Jahun. I'm currently serving as a Dharma instructor and lecturer at Dongguk University. So I'm spending most of my time with college students. Before coming to the university, I also had similar role at University Hospital that was affiliated to the Dongguk University School Foundation. So thus I feel very lucky since I not only do academic research, but also have a chance to implement the teachings in real life settings. Again, thanks to Venerable Bongak and 샤카디타 for giving me this opportunity to present in front of you. As you can see, the title of my presentation today is Compassion Practice of Korean Female Buddhist Medical Workers During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Yes, it's about the full-time registered nurses at Hospital University, and it's about their sufferings, and it's about the means to alleviate their sufferings. And among various means, Buddhist meditation is effective self-care strategy in dealing with their work-related stresses and psychological afflictions for healthcare workers, here especially nurses. Okay, and then what about compassion practice? I want to talk about that from now on. I organized my presentation borrowing the scheme of the Four Noble Truths, the fundamental and comprehensive teaching of the Buddha, because I think that it teaches that everything starts from here and now. So recognizing the reality and the problems that we face right now and accepting them, of course not in passive ways, are the first step toward problem solutions. So let's move on to the sufferings of the medical workers they face today. The constant exposure to other sufferings and death can predispose nurses to similar feelings of distress and negative consequences of caregiving for others. And nurses describe their own psychological affliction caused by work-related distress and exhaustion as compassion burnout or fatigue. Okay. And burnout is a response to chronic job-related stressors and developed without exposure to certain trauma. It is characterized by emotional exhaustion, cynicism, negativity, depersonalization of patients, inefficacy, and lack of perceived accomplishment. WHO in 2018 classified the burnout as a disease, identifying it as a syndrome resulting from chronic work stress that has not been successfully managed. Aren't we all familiar with this burnout? I'm about to have one of these days. I'm just kidding. Okay, and then what are the causes behind these sufferings of nurses? So we should look at different aspects to understand their sufferings. So let me skip few slides, jump into few slides forward to talk about the causes of their sufferings. So we need to look at different aspects: sociocultural, environmental, relational, and ethical. Sociocultural aspect. The nature of nurses' work creates an environment where even small mistakes are not tolerated, since they are dealing with the patients and their lives. Korean society also seems to consistently present stereotypes in nursing. People usually think that nursing is a woman's job. So nurses have to be caring and compassionate and are often required to sacrifice their needs to patients' needs and sacrifice their needs to the organization's need and society's needs. Okay, second is the environmental aspect. Nurses usually exposed to various forms of violence in hospitals. Verbal and physical abuse by coworkers, patients, and guardians intensify the vulnerability of their mental condition. Third is relational. This is very complex. Nurses need to cooperate with many people from different sectors. So these complex relationships are between doctors and nurses, among different kinds of nurses, and between patients and nurses, and also between guardians and nurses. So this is very complex relations they are facing in. So nurses often play a mediating role between doctors and patients, and this is one of the hardest duty they have, besides giving care to the patients. And the last is ethical issue. They face situations that need moral intervention, such as mediating decisions regarding life-sustaining treatment, admitting terminal patients to the ICU, invasive treatments for terminal patients following orders that are against their own moral values, economic burden of increased medical fees, and so on. So nurses are often placed in positions of conflict between right and wrong. So this is the ethical issue they face. So these reasons are causes of the sufferings of nurses, which they describe compassion burnout. Now, we could raise this question. Can compassion cause such a disease? Let me go back. Can compassion cause such burnout or disease or stress? Isn't compassion what we practice for, all of us, all the time? Will it bring us the burnout too? Did the Buddha have burnout too? Okay. Telling you the conclusion first, the term compassion burnout should be replaced as empathic distress fatigue, and we need to draw a clear line, clear distinction between empathy and compassion. So in short, the term compassion is not appropriate to use when speaking of the stress or fatigue. Instead, compassion actually helps reducing the stress. So I'd like to share some of the scientific findings. The clear distinctions between empathy and conclusion. If you look at the definition, empathy is more like feeling with others when we are exposed to their distress and suffering. And compassion is instead feeling for others who are in pain with warmth, empathic concern, capacity to understand their perspective and intentions, and having prosocial behavior such as the motivation to act with compassion to relieve their pain. So, scientific findings show us the clear distinction between empathy, which leads us to more negative side of mental state, but compassion leading us to more positive, helping both the patients, helping both others and ourselves at the same time. And so they say empathy is more like socio-affective pathway, and compassion is more of socio-cognitive pathway. So you can read the fMRI, the more details of fMRI findings, and I'd like to share the implication. So empathy, when we empathize with a person who is in pain, our brain will show activation or similar circuits as the brain of the person with whom we are empathizing. However, compassion is linked to helping, reward, and forgiveness behavior, whereas empathic distress fatigue decreases helping behavior and is associated with increased aggressive behavior. So probably you can now have some of ideas that empathy and compassion are very different, and that's why the compassion burnout should be replaced to empathic distress. So in short, when we empathize with someone in pain, we are at a junction where we can feel distressful and trapped in negativity, or we move forward to more positive and compassionate mind. So when we talk about compassion, it involves a healthy balance of compassion for others and compassion for oneself. And what is truly important is that compassion can be taught or trained. So from socio-affective path, which is described empathy, in order to move toward the socio-cognitive path, which is compassion, we need very effective interventions such as meditation practice. So to support this idea that Buddhist meditation is an effective compassion practice, I'd like to share with you one study that I was conducted with my colleague Sinim. We chose two different groups of nurses, one with meditation experience and the other is without meditation experience. So one with meditation experience, they had regular Buddhist practice such as guided meditation, mindful prostrations, sutra copying, and sitting meditations. And the other group didn't have such experience. So when I mean practice, those selected nurses who have regular practice, they have been practicing one of those practice above for 3 or more months consistently, and 3 to 5 days of practice per week, and at least 1 hour of practice per day. I think it's quite a courage and sacrifice for them. During the very busy time of a day, they spend at least 1 hour for their practice. And then the depression and resilience measure were tested for those two different groups. And in short, meditators were less depressed, even though age matters. Meditators, so in 2020, the cutoff point of average Korean depression measure was 36, and meditators had 30.51, non-meditators 40.82. So you can see the ones with meditation experience were very less depressed compared to the ones without meditation. And in terms of resilience, in Korea, the subcategories of resilience are classified into three: self-regulation, interpersonal relations, positivity. And all those numbers higher for the meditators. So, the result of this study supports the hypothesis that meditation has a positive effect on the mental health of nurses regarding depression and resilience. Okay. Let me go into the cessation part. Okay, of course, it's not complete cessation of sufferings. However, nurses with their regular practice experience talked that they benefited from the practice both mentally and emotionally. And they're all saying it's improving the quality of their life. So I'd like to share some of the narratives that I got from the nurses. Distinguishing and distancing between one's own and others' emotional and mental states are important for the nurse's mental health. Self-care or compassion practice strategies such as meditation can be effective in resulting one's emotions and steering the direction from empathic distress to compassion in mind. So one nurse explained, "My own comfort and happiness are as important as those of the patients, guardians, and coworkers, and are the driving force that initiates all the work I face as a healthcare worker. Being mindful of my breathing before starting another hectic day and allowing my body and mind total relaxation before sleep are truly reassuring and comforting for me. Meditation became my daily routine, and I found myself turning more positive. I now try to be clear about my own feelings and others, and aware of the status of my own mind and feelings. The longer I meditate, the more I get used to the process. I now know that deep breathing can calm my anxious and nervous mind. I became more confident when facing situations or people, more energetic and more thankful." Okay. And this one who did the mindful prostration. Mindfulness-related literature confirms that people who focus on living in the present moment are less distressed than those who are focused on the past or worry about the future. Mindfulness-related abilities and practices have been shown to be closely linked to the mechanisms of emotion regulation, relying heavily on aspects of self-awareness. Another nurse explained, "Mindful prostrations do not change my difficult and stressful environment. The burden of work, stressful relationships, and the things that make me anxious and confused continue. However, what is surprising to me is that my attitude toward the environment that has become more flexible and relaxed. We strive for the future, but it has not yet come. Working for tomorrow is precious, but wouldn't it be better to be happy here and now? Mindful prostrations bring me peace and happiness at this very moment." Another positive effect about the mindfulness-related meditation that deals with positive emotions and self-compassion. So I'll share the last narrative from another nurse. "Gratitude and taking a positive perspective even in the face of negative circumstances and self-compassion are considered essential to self-care." So another nurse said, "With the prolonged COVID-19, I have one more added task in an already full to-do list. I need to take care of my mind that is about to collapse. I sit comfortably with eyes closed and try to untangle my emotions of anxiety, depression, resentment, regret, and failure. As I start copying one word after another of the teachings of the Buddha, the angry waves in my mind become calm and quiet. I can feel a smile around my mouth and my mind becomes clear. Copying even a few pages gives me a sense of achievement and chance to thank myself. When copying sutras, I become kind, supportive, and understanding toward myself. This is why I continue copying sutras. Okay, so emotion regulation, ability to focus on present moment, positivity, and self-compassion are some of the benefits of meditation that the participants in the meditator group narrated. The benefits of meditation as an effective self-care strategy are believed to be associated with the resilience of nurses facing depression. So I just now talked about the suffering of the nurses and the cause of their sufferings and their efforts to alleviate their sufferings, and how development of compassion is clearly related to meditation practice. Now I need to conclude. This uncertainty and unpredictability experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic reflect the nature of impermanence and suffering, and at the same time take a toll on our mental and physical health. The practice of compassion among female Korean Buddhist nurses during the COVID-19 pandemic confirms that meditation practice can be an effective self-care and compassion strategy in both personal and professional settings for healthcare providers. Let me share some of the photos that I got from the nurses. So this one usually starts her day sitting comfortably, doing breathing exercise, and at the end, she says she does relaxation exercise. And then this one regularly does 108 mindful prostrations every day in the hospital. Of course, I want to add that the efforts shouldn't be just done in personal levels. Much more systematic and organizational approach are required. And this is the end of my presentation, but I'd like to recognize, is anyone here medical workers working at the hospital? Please raise your hand. Anyone? 여기 계신 분들 중에서 혹시 의료진 분들 계신가요? I think we have medical staff from Dongguk University Hospital working here for us, right? 안 계신가요? 계신데요. Can you stand up? Can we please give a big applause to her? 네, 감사합니다. Yeah. So this was my presentation, and I'd like to share a few seconds of, before closing, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude and respect to those medical workers, the daughters of the Buddha. And then, can we play this? A few seconds of Jeju Ocean. Thank you.
Thank you, Jahun Sunim. Our next presenter is Dr. Suk-Young Hwang, who will be speaking on the necessity of Buddhist practice in daily life of modern society, focusing on the teachings of Shun Master Daehang.
Good morning, everyone. 안녕하세요. It is a great honor to have this valuable opportunity to present my paper here today. From the bottom of my heart, I would like to express my gratitude to all the members of the 샤카디타 for their enormous efforts in organizing this wonderful conference. I send my heartfelt respect to all of you, and I sincerely welcome all our foreign guests from abroad. Today, I would like to talk about how we can practice Buddhism in daily life, and I will share some thoughts on this topic with you. Let us begin with the purpose of life. What do you think that most people want to achieve in their lives? If we can compare our lives to mountain climbing, which mountain do you want to climb? For many people, it could be money, fame, or a high position in society. And these mountains are just for themselves and their own success alone. But we all know that this isn't enough to achieve true happiness. These materialism and self-centered values have caused numerous problems, conflicts, discrimination of all kinds, and sufferings on earth. We know that we have to live together in order to survive in this global community. And we know that changes must be made. We need cooperation, empathy, and generosity. We know it so well that even the companies that were profit-driven and blinded by competition are called upon to take different paths. Facing this situation, leadership education for companies has recently undergone significant changes. Some of the key features of these changes are looking inward and working for the benefit of all. First, we'll talk about letting go of self and looking inward. Let's take you theory, for example. According to Professor Arthur Shammer from MIT, we can bring out the best potential we have in us by going deeper into our inner space and emerging from within. And there are also many other theories like this on the importance of looking inward. Another change is the emphasis on coexistence. Some people suggest that we have entered the era of a quantum economy where interconnectedness and infiniteness are recognized as necessary economic principles. In this era, management is required to be done with compassion and empathy. These two changes that we have discussed, going inside and coexistence, don't they sound so easy and obvious? However, in reality, the ocean of life can be very hard to surf through all the waves. The waves of problems can often overwhelm us. Many people today are just too busy that it's hard for them to go inward or be compassionate at all. Then, how can they practice these two? As you may already know, meditation is becoming popular worldwide as a method of searching for inner peace. But on the other hand, there are some who criticize meditation. They say it can be a spiritual bypass, which means that while meditating, some people tend to avoid pain without having fundamental changes in themselves. They also criticize that some ways of meditation have been individualized, that people are blinded to societal or structural problems. So, it might provide them with only an instant satisfaction that has been commodified like McDonald's. This is what is called mindfulness. Then, what can Buddhism offer to people as a daily practice? Here, I would like to introduce to you a practice method presented by Sun Master Daeng of Korea. According to Sun Master Daeng, everyone and everything comes from one mind, and all phenomena are the manifestations and functions of one mind. She explains that our life consists of our body, consciousness, and the fundamental mind with limitless wisdom and compassion, which means human body, consciousness, and fundamental mind are functioning as one mind altogether. Therefore, we should remain connected to the fundamental mind so that we can use wisdom and compassion from our foundation. Then, how can you adopt this principle in our daily lives? Master Deng compares this mind process. Master Deng has presented a simple way to practice it, letting go and entrust. You should first believe that your fundamental mind exists prior to even your own thoughts. Regardless of what you think, when you entrust it to your fundamental one mind, the mind energy from the foundation functions to make changes in outcome. By observing this process, you can develop positive faith in your foundation, and with that faith, you should keep letting go and entrusting again and again to your fundamental one mind. Of course, the results may not always be what you've desired, but if we are going to overcome the habit of being attached to your ego, it is necessary to practice to entrust everything to the one mind without any exceptions. It is the principle of doing without thinking you are doing. One mind is the true doer who is doing everything, not yourself. Master Deng compares this mind process to a computer. She said, experiment with your mind energy in your daily life. It's like we have an inner mind computer. We already have the data input saved in our mind computer. Then, according to the input, the computer automatically generates the output. By saying it functions like a computer, Master Deng means whether it's positive or negative, what emerges from within ourselves determines how we think, feel, and act. However, Master Deng also said that those inputs are not fixed and are inherently empty. Thus, we are free to change it. It is not destined to be our destiny. We can re-input so that the previous input of I can be erased and reprogrammed to be attuned to our fundamental mind. Hence, we can be the masters of our inner computers. And here, about this principle, I would like to share a story from my own experience. I've been working as a counselor for many years, and I wanted to help people in need. Years ago, I was asked to help the prisoners on death row. At first, I was very scared because I was afraid of crime and violence. Naturally, I was hesitant to accept the task. But then, I remembered this principle of mind and decided to make a new input and said to myself, it's not me who's doing all these things, but my foundation, one mind. I started to let go of my fear and entrust it to my foundation. I began to meet the prisoners over the years, and it was not easy every time, especially since some prisoners didn't seem to change. Sometimes I just wanted to give up, to be honest. And whenever I was frustrated like that, I just kept entrusting my thoughts to my fundamental mind. And that's why I have been able to meet the prisoners for more than 20 years until now. It was a big step for me. Now I know that I have my foundation to depend on. Knowing it motivates me to be bolder and made me face difficult problems head-on. I learned much from that experience, and I am very thankful for it. Now that we have discussed these practices, we also need to know how to live together in harmony in this global society. As Master Deng emphasized, we are all inherently interconnected through one mind. Hence, our lives should progress in a way that we benefit one another. So, how do we coexist with other beings? We should communicate through one root of one mind. Now, for this section, I'll share with you a part of Master Deng's Dharma talk.
내가 모든 내면 세계의 한 마음, 외부의 모든 것이 들어오는 대로 한 마음. 옷과 날아다니는 것도 다 모두 통일해서 모두 작용을 하고 한 마음으로 돌아갑니다. 전부 통합니다. 하여튼 그래서 한 마음으로 돌아가는 동시에 이 한 마음은 이 개별적인 한 마음이 아닙니다. 포괄적인 한 마음. 즉 공생, 공용, 공체, 공식화하고 돌아가는 한 마음. 이 한 마음을 딱 한 마음으로 씌운다면 중심, 주인공이 되는 거죠.
As you have listened, Master Deng promotes coexistence both inwards and outwards. When we think of coexistence, we usually think about communicating with other beings, but Master Deng emphasized that we have to coexist in harmony with our inner beings first. There are various inner consciousnesses, so many, that it's like a community. These consciousnesses constantly emerge within us, and we should be able to control them by entrusting them to our fundamental mind. When we can do that, those consciousnesses can be transformed into bodhisattvas. Master Deng said that this transformation is part of the true evolution of a human mind. How do we coexist with other beings? No matter how different we are all connected through our foundation. When we let go and entrust to the fundamental mind, things communicate and move towards harmony with the whole. Master Deng's practice method has a number of characteristics, and I'd like to explain them to you. First, we can use the events of our daily lives as materials for spiritual practice, which enables us to experience the wisdom and harmony of the fundamental mind. Simply let go and entrust all that you encounter to one mind. Although this method may seem simple at first glance, it actually aims for a fundamental transformation on your spiritual level. The daily practice of Sun Master Deng can be considered not only as mindfulness meditation, which is widely practiced today, but also as the utilization of a mind that directly exercises the energy of our mind. Next, Master Deng calls on us to start from yourself. You can be the master of your mind, and you are free to change. To benefit yourself and all other beings, above all, you must start from within and save your inner beings first. Regarding our relationships, Master Deng said, every other being is another shape of myself. If we realize the meaning behind these words, we can communicate with anybody through our fundamental mind. She also said, a deep and sincere mind can reach anywhere. It is the true energy. Nowadays, we are very concerned about all the problems on Earth, such as climate change and environmental issues and many others. So, many predictions and suggestions were made on the question of what the future of the Earth might be. And according to Master Deheng, it all depends on the thoughts of each and every one of us. Master Deng always wished that all beings may blossom their own flowers of enlightenment. As I finish my talk today, I too sincerely hope that all people on earth will light their Buddha mind and wake up and laugh. Thank you very much for listening to my talk.
Thank you, Dr. Huang. Our next presenter is Dr. Eun-Young Kim, who will be speaking on the social influence and challenges of lay Buddhist women in Korea.
Yes, I'm honored to be with you today, Buddha's Door, at one of the finest international conferences in Buddhist studies in the world. I'm Eun-Young Kim, researching and teaching at Dongguk University in Korea. Today I want to present about Korean Buddhism. The title is The Social Influence and Challenges of Lay Buddhist Women in Korea. Finally, this is the last presentation in session 1. I think I don't have much time because we have to go lunchy. Yeah. I do my best to end presentation on time. Here is a very interesting picture. You can see that are located side by side with the church or the cross and a Buddhist temple. As in this picture, various religions coexist in Korea. Korea is well known for its religious pluralism in the sense that there are no specific religions that are accorded more importance than other religions in the country. It is of greatest significance to accurately grasp the phenomenon of the multi-religious situation in Korea because it helps to understand Korean female Buddhists. Since there is not much earlier research data that can be provided an in-depth understanding of modern female lay Buddhists in Korea, this study examines their social influence and challenges through the activities of female lay Buddhists. In this study, I want to understand more deeply the role and objective reality of women in Korean Buddhism, and also look at the contributions female lay Buddhists can make in the Korean Buddhist community in the future. For this, I try to provide an analysis of the influence of Buddhism in Korean society based on the census report. The population and housing census report conducted by the National Statistical Office was the first comprehensive survey on region. It is also considered to have comprised the most important data on the religious population in Korea. As said before, Korea is a representative pluralistic country where various religions coexist. Among them, Buddhism has been the most important as a traditional religion. The Korea National Statistics Office conducts an analysis of religion every 10 years in the population and housing census report. The population has a similar number of religious and non-religious people. Buddhism, Catholicism, and Protestantism are the main religions among the religiously affiliated. Buddhism has a stronger influence in Korea than any other religious culture except for 2015. This is shown in Table 1. Table 2 shows that there are more female than male Buddhists during this period. The number of monks in Korea Buddhism is on a gradual decline, and there tend to be more bhikkhunis than bhikkhunis in the gender ratio. The proportion and importance of female lay Buddhists in Korea Buddhism is clearly revealed. If so, do they have an important influence on Korea Buddhism and Korea society? We need to understand more about the social activities of female lay Buddhists in modern times. Female lay Buddhists in the modern period in Korea formed and operated their own organizations. Their devoted efforts to the Joseon independence movement and women's education give us a glimpse of the independent modernity of lay women during the modern period. After the liberation of Korea, new associations were founded mainly for devotional practice. Since the 1980s, there has been a movement in the Bhikshuni Sangha to establish their own identity and dharma lineage through the dual ordination. However, the tendency of modern female lay Buddhists to depend on male leaders extends up to today. In the Jogye order, the main religious order of Korean Buddhism, female lay Buddhists' right to political franchise was excluded. A survey on gender equality awareness among Buddhists found that women were experiencing gender discrimination and felt that gender equality should be spread. The Buddhist Women's Development Institute was founded in 2000. It was organized to identify and develop Buddhist women leaders and to help women practice the Buddha's teaching. This organization aims to innovate and transform the religious culture of female Buddhists so that they can lead happy lives on their own and to train female leaders who will embody Buddhist compassion and equality in the home, temple, and society. However, from the time of its establishment, the Buddhist Women's Development Institute did not have the authority to directly elect its representatives due to the limitation imposed when the organization was established as the affiliate organization of the Jogye order. In order to solve these problems and pursue independence and autonomy as a Fan-Buddhist women's group, members are reorganizing their relationship with the order. By contrast, the National Women's Buddhist Association, newly established in 2022, is based on the need for a women's organization identified with the Jogye order. From an international perspective, the social engagement of female lay Buddhists can be seen through the activities of 샤카디타 Korea. The official launch of 샤카디타 Korea was held in 2014 or 13. In addition to their own daily practice, members actively participate in presentation and volunteers as lay Buddhists at the biannual 샤카디타 conference. Of special note, 샤카디타 organized and operated on the principle of collaboration between bhikshunis and female lay Buddhists, demonstrating an universal solidarity that transcends the boundaries of sectarianism. However, their achievements fail in comparison with the activities of women in other regions. The Young Women's Christian Association of Korea, YWCA, for example, it was founded in 1922. YWCA are voicing their concern in various fields such as environment, culture, and education. They also have a significant presence in Korea's civil society and politics. Considering Buddhism's history, status as a traditional religion, and number of adherents, in comparison to other religions, currently Korean female lay Buddhists have not yet clearly realized their capabilities. The purpose of this presentation has been to provide a brief overview of female lay Buddhists in Korea. According to the Population and Housing Census report, Buddhism has the most significant influence on religious culture in Korea. It also confirmed that Korean Buddhism has more female lay Buddhists than males. Although female lay Buddhists were numerically strong, their social engagement is not as active as it should be. Background influences include gender stereotypes in both the religious culture and patriarchal social culture of Korea. Another factor is the continuing practice and relying on male leaders and the influence of and sponsorship of the certain orders after the demise of progressive women's organization in the modern era. However, female lay Buddhists in Korea did not simply conform to this culture. They have constantly attempted to network alternative organizations to counter these tendencies. It has been over 20 years since the Women's Lay organization was continued in Korea, and about 10 years since it began actively participating in global Buddhist organizations such as 샤카디타. On the other hand, pan-Buddhist independence beyond specific orders has been emphasized. On the other hand, full support for women's organization by specific orders began. The voices of Korea Buddhist lay women could be heard in global Buddhist communities through collaboration with bhikkshunis. To maintain this diversity in the future, solidarity is more important than relying on a charismatic individual or a specific order for support. Furthermore, maintaining historical records of Korean female lay Buddhists is necessary. What kind of future contribution should Korean female Buddhists make in the community now that the capabilities of female Buddhists are being realized? There is a time to create new alternatives beyond just mirroring. Whether it is a new culture of worship, a generally internalized Buddhism, or social leadership, the innovations that exist in Korean Buddhist organizations have not occurred must be implemented by female lay Buddhists. I hope we will prevent the decline of religion and the secularization of Korea and instead lead the world closer to wisdom and a more compassionate society. Thank you. And please give big clap for our moderator, Linda Kroder, now her turn. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. And I'd like to thank all the panelists today for their wonderful papers, and what a great way to start off our conference. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you, Professor Crowder and our presenters for their successful session. And before concluding the morning session, as a token of our gratitude, the Korean Bhikshuni Association of Jogae Order prepared small gifts for the moderator and presenters of the session. And the gift is 발우, a wooden eating bowl of Snim in Korea. In particular, the gifts were made by a Korean artist recognized as a living human treasure by the government. Bongak Snim, president of the Korean Bhikshuni Association, as well as president of this conference, will deliver the baru to the moderator and the presenters. Bongak Snim, please come up to the stage. Yes, please welcome. Sharon So, president of the 샤카디타 International, is here as well. Yes, and yeah, I would like to make some announcements. And first, lunch will be served from, please, have a seat, please. And the lunch will be served from 11:30 to 1 p.m. for all participants at the Bongwonsa Temple, just like yesterday. And in the grand ballroom on the first floor of this building, Korean traditional Buddhist music and dance performances by Donghwan Snim and Maha Dancing Group from 11 o'clock will be held. And tea meditation by Jogyeon Snim will be also being held in the same place. And various Buddhist artworks and objects from different countries are on display in the grand ballroom as well. So please visit this place and look around them. And yes, and I would like to make some announcements about this afternoon's workshop. This afternoon's workshop is open to those who have registered to participate. And participants are on a first-come, first-served basis. And if there are many people for one workshop, those who applied later may not be able to participate. Then please register to another workshop. And not last but not least, afternoon session starts at 1 o'clock. So please return to this place by 1 o'clock. And thank you. Enjoy your time and lunch. Thank you.